All right, so today's video is going to be about the immune system, and this is going to be a really simple version of it. The immune system is a really complex body system, but we're going to try and strip it down to its basics here. So there are two kind of parts of your immune system, the non-specific and the adaptive. So these teal boxes right here represent what's a part of your innate immunity. So you have external defenses, which are part of your immune system, and that would be like your skin. Your skin is the single most important component of the immune system. Without your skin, you're dead. Mucous membranes are also another part of your non-specific immune system. They just secrete mucus, and then bacteria, viruses, they get stuck in the mucus, and they have difficulty infiltrating your body then. So if you think about, which places bacteria or viruses, which we call pathogens, can get into your body. You think of your ears, eyes, nose, mouth, right? That's where your body produces mucus, and that's just there to catch bacteria or pathogens. And then we got secretions. Now you might be wondering, what do we mean by secretions? Well, for example, your skin, when you sweat and you always have this oil on your skin, your body produces these secretions. And for example, the pH of the secretions on your skin are around pH of 4. So if you remember the pH scale from 1 to 14, between 1 and 7 is acidic. So if you have a pH of 4, I mean, that's slightly acidic. Doesn't kill all bacteria by any means, but it does kill some. Then you also have internal defenses, which are part of your non-specific immune system. Things like phagocytic cells, antimicrobial proteins, the inflammatory response, and natural killer cells. Now, there's a lot of fancy words in there, but the whole idea of the non-specific immune system is that it is not specific to any particular pathogen. So for example, your skin, it doesn't really fight off just one thing. It's just a blanket defense against many. Same thing with mucus, same thing with secretions. All of these internal defenses as well, they don't distinguish who their enemy is. It's just if it's foreign, they are out to get it. Adaptive or acquired immunity is where your body adapts to specific pathogens and it tries to, get rid of them. So there are two different pathways in your adaptive immune system. You have the humoral response, or sometimes it's called antibody-mediated immunity, and then you have cell-mediated response, and we'll focus mostly on them here in a short little bit. Now, the whole idea of your immune system is based off of two kind of important terms here, antigens and antibodies. And if you remember when we talked about blood cell types, we talked about these. So these yellow components up here would be antigens. Now these would be attached to various cells, and you can see that there are specific shapes to them. This is how your body recognizes which cells belong to your body and which cells are foreign. So all of the cells of your body have different antigens on there, and your body recognizes them. There are no antibodies which fit them. And if there's no antibodies that fit the antigens of your cells, it can't attack them. However, your body has all of these different antigens that match up with foreign invaders. So you can see that this antibody right here, you can see how it has this specific shape, kind of like a lock, and it matches this key on this antigen. So it would attach on there and recognize that this does not belong to our body, and it's going to attack it. This antibody right here would fit this antigen, and this one onto this one, etc. This one right here, you can see it probably doesn't fit any of these antibodies, so this one would belong likely to one of the cells in your body. This is the basis of how the immune system works, how it recognizes friend from foe. So when we were talking about the non-specific immune system there, one thing I mentioned was a phagocytic cell. Phage is actually Latin for eat. Cyte or cyto for cyte is cell, and ic is pertaining to. So what this means is pertaining to eating cells. And a macrophage is just one specific type of a phagocytic cell. So in this diagram, these little guys right here represent microbes, some sort of pathogen. Now it's not really showing it, but they would have antigens, and this macrophage would have some antibodies attached to it. And it would recognize that, well, this does not belong to our body, so what it's doing is it's engulfing it in a process called endocytosis. Then it gets packaged into a vesicle inside the body, and then this organelle called a lysosome will fuse to it and releases these digestive enzymes in, which then destroys the pathogen, and then the cell releases the contents outside. Now, there's a couple of reasons for releasing it outside. Biggest one is that when it breaks it all apart and it releases outside, the antigens are still in this mess that is released. So different other cells can recognize that, whoa, there is something foreign in this body based off of what has been released from this cell. Now, the adaptive immune response can be divided into two types, which we mentioned earlier: cell-mediated immunity and humoral, or also called antibody-mediated immunity. Now, antibody-mediated immunity starts with B lymphocytes and targets pathogens in the bodily fluids. Cell-mediated immunity begins with T lymphocytes and targets pathogens inside cells. Now, you might be wondering what kind of pathogens get inside your cells. Well, the biggest thing is viruses. Viruses try to get inside your cells and then they hide there. And we're going to watch a video on that on Thursday. So the differences between the two is basically antibody-mediated immunity will target pathogens that are in your bodily fluids like blood. Cell-mediated immunity targets pathogens that they've already gotten inside your cells. And antibody-mediated immunity begins with B lymphocytes. Cell-mediated immunity begins with T lymphocytes. Now, I apologize for the poor picture here. I just took a picture of it from a textbook because I couldn't find any decent ones online. So what we're going to look at here is the antibody-mediated immunity. So this is the process of removing pathogens from your blood, for example. So right up here you can see are some antigens. Let's say that these represent bacteria. And then here is the B cell, more formally called a B lymphocyte. So what ends up happening is the B cell will recognize these pathogens, so it senses that we are under attack. Two things are going to happen. This B cell then is now stimulated. I wish my cursor would stop disappearing. This B cell has been stimulated to divide, and what it's going to do is it's going to split into two other different types of things. It's going to go this pathway and create what we call memory B cells, and it's also going to create this cell over here, which we call plasma cells. Now, the plasma cells are the important ones for getting rid of this infection right now. Plasma cells, what they do is they actually, as you can see down here, they secrete antibodies. So this B lymphocyte, you can notice that it had these antibodies attached to it to try and recognize these pathogens. Once it recognizes that they're under attack, it divides into these plasma cells, and instead of having these antibodies on the outside, what they do is they just mass produce them inside and release them out. And then they are free to cruise the bloodstream, and they will bond onto these bacteria and prevent them from causing any harm. And they will actually release chemicals summoning phagocytic cells to come eat them. So this is the one pathway. The other pathway, these memory B cells, the purpose of them is so that if you ever get attacked by this bacteria again, you have these memory cells which can quickly act to create an army. So the memory B cells here, you can see if we come down here, it says second exposure to same antigen. So now let's say that this is 2 years later, our bacteria are back, and the memory B cells get activated. And what they're going to do is they're going to produce more memory B cells, and then they will produce plasma cells to battle it. So you can kind of see if you look at this is the very first infection. There are very few plasma cells, very few memory B cells, but every time you get exposed to it, because you already have memory cells left over from the previous infection, you are quickly able to produce many, many plasma cells and build up an army really, really fast. That's why when you get sick from something, you're less likely to get sick from it again, and why we also vaccinate you. We essentially are trying to build up your memory cells, so that way when you get infected, you have an army very quickly to destroy it. Now, cell-mediated immunity is when the pathogen already gets inside your cell. So what we have right here is we have a macrophage. So the macrophage has been, it likely consumed some sort of bacteria already, or it could also be another cell that has already been infected. And if you remember, cell-mediated immunity starts with what we call these T lymphocytes or T cells. Now it is bonding to this macrophage. Now you might be seeing all these little red triangles on the outside. What those are the antigens from the bacteria that it ate. It will kind of stick them out the cell membrane like flags. And what it does is it signals, I have a bacteria inside me. I have this pathogen. We need to destroy myself. So the T cell, it recognizes, well, this has been infected. Now, the T cell becomes a helper T cell. The helper T cells don't kill the macrophages. Helper T cells, kind of like what their name implies, they summon help. They are kind of like, if you think of this like an army, they're like the scouts. They are always cruising around your body looking for infected cells. And then once they have found one, they release chemicals which summon killer T cells. And just like their name says, what they're going to do is they are going to kill that cell. They release chemicals that create these little holes in the cell membrane, and then water will flood in and cause the cell to rupture or explode. So here's a pretty handy little chart which kind of breaks it down. So on the left side in the red here, we have the humoral response. On the right, we have the cell-mediated immune response. So here we have first exposure to antigen. We go down. Antigens are engulfed and displayed by dendritic cells. Now what that's going to do is that activates helper T cells. And then we can go one or two ways here. Let us go the cell-mediated route first. So the helper T cells are going to secrete cytokines, which activate cytotoxic T cells. Now, we haven't really mentioned that name before, but cytotoxic T cells are just a name for killer T cells. So the helper T cells summon the cytotoxic T cells or killer cells, and then the killer T cells are going to give rise, they're going to split apart and create more killer T cells, and they're also going to create memory killer T cells, and it will also kill that cell in that process. Helper T cells, once they've been activated, not only will they create killer T cells and summon them, but they will also split apart and make memory helper T cells so that there are, again, the memory cells are there so that if there's another infection, they can respond to it quickly. Now the helper T cells are also going to summon B cells. Because if you remember, the B cells can split into memory B cells and plasma cells. And the plasma cells will be the ones that secrete the antibodies. Now, the helper T cells, they recognize that the cells have already been infected. So why are they summoning B cells? Because B cells can only kill off pathogens when they're still in the bloodstream. But the helper T cells realize if a cell has been infected, there's probably a whole bunch more pathogens that are still in the bloodstream. So they will summon these B cells to come along and secrete antibodies to help fight the pathogens that are still in the bloodstream, and it will summon the killer T cells to come kill the infected cells already. Now I hope that kind of helps. If you have any questions, certainly talk to me. I mean, rewatch this video as well. And oh, one more thing I wanted to mention is talking about HIV and AIDS. The reason why we have so much trouble defeating it is every virus attacks one type of cell or one type of tissue. The problem with HIV is it kills T cells. It infects T cells. So what ends up happening is your T cells, like your helper T cell here, get infected by HIV. So what ends up happening is the helper T cells recognize that they are infected and they summon killer T cells to come and kill the T cells. So the problem is what ends up happening is your T cells get infected and they summon the other T cells to come and kill them. So what ends up happening is all your T cells just annihilate themselves trying to get rid of this HIV. And then you don't die from the HIV. You die because you have no T cells left to fight off any other infections you get. So you end up dying from, something simple like the common cold. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this presentation and good luck on your in-class assignment coming up.